That's Professor Helen Rees. Now, instead of prioritizing a so-called collective and redistributional approach to vaccines through COVID or COVAX, a mad nationalistic rush for vaccines has taken over. The last 7 months have seen almost 13 billion doses of various vaccines being bought mainly through bilateral deals between specific nations and private pharmaceutical corporations, with a few between states. This is more than enough to vaccinate every single adult person in the world. But, says activist Dale Mckinley, the nationalist greed is astonishing, with countries like Canada having bought 5 times more vaccines than needed. I'm hoping that he is with us now on Tuesday lunchtime. Dale, good afternoon to you. I know we've had a little bit of difficulty getting through to you. Are you with me?
I am here, Jeremy. Hi.
Indeed. So let me put this to you first of all, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. The jostling and the queue jumping that you have so eloquently outlined in Maverick Citizen, surely that was inevitable. It was always going to happen.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, look, we've come to expect these kinds of things, I guess, given what has happened over the last couple of years, particularly in Europe and the United States. But I don't think it was inevitable. And the reason why I say that is because we have something called the WHO, which right from the beginning, when this pandemic started, was there on the ground and should have basically been the entity that drove not only the response to the initial response to the pandemic, but in this case, the vaccine rollout and distribution. And as you've mentioned, the COVAX facility, which was supposed to be the sort of multinational global facility where there was cross-subsidization and a rollout, has basically been not abandoned, but it certainly hasn't been supported well. And that has basically resulted in countries like the UK, the US, and others that we've mentioned, going back into sort of a nationalist mindset and saying, well, let's get as much as we can, as quickly as we can, and damn the rest of everybody else, more or less. And I think that's the unfortunate reality.
Is your argument not predicated, though, on people actually listening to the WHO? I get back to my point that even going forward, is it not a simple case of the strongest survive? It's all about who has the most money, the deepest pockets.
Well, unfortunately, that seems to be the way in which our global order has moved with regards to this pandemic. But here's the irony and the hypocrisy, is that those countries in the north and all of the developed countries have told us for the last 2 or 3 decades that we must have a globalization, we must open borders, we must trade, we're all interdependent. One thing depends upon another. And most people have sort of said, okay, well, you know, that's true. And then yet when it comes to a health pandemic, they go back into this sort of cocoon, this nationalist cocoon, and throw the money around. And that's the reality. We have to face the reality. And you can see from your report earlier, our country and many other countries are scrambling now. They're scrambling to get vaccines from wherever they can. But that shouldn't be the case, and it doesn't have to be the case. And I think we can turn this around if the countries, and if particularly the Biden administration and others, begin to cooperate and allow for the waiver, particularly to this intellectual property with the World Trade Organization, that would allow other countries to begin to develop vaccines at much cheaper prices.
It's going to be difficult to convince them, though, surely?
Certainly it's going to be difficult to convince them, but I think we are in a situation where the argument is very strong. And the argument is simply, I'm not a doctor or anything, but I mean, I can grasp this, which is that the longer that you have people around the world not being vaccinated and not getting to that 70% of where we need population immunity, everyone is going to be affected. If there's one lesson that this pandemic has taught us, it's that you cannot isolate yourself from the pandemic. It's simply not possible, at least in the long term it's not. So it's in the interest of the United States and Europe and all of the wealthier countries to reach out and make this vaccine accessible in the long term, because if they don't, it's going to come back to bite them big time.
Should Big Pharma the world over have been more aggressive in this process, or are they simply in it for the margin?
Look, I think that there's obviously pharmaceutical companies have a role to play. But here's the deal. Most of those companies, Moderna, Pfizer, and everything, were provided with large amounts of capital from public purse in the US and Europe to develop the vaccines. Fair enough. But then don't start charging and start basically saying, well, we're going to basically make it unaffordable for those that can't do so. Let's have a situation where our taxpayers' money, whether it's in South Africa or otherwise, is used to purchase the vaccines so that it's made equitable and accessible to everybody. This is what has to happen. If we have vaccine apartheid, if we only those that are in the north or in the richer countries or in our country, the middle class and the health workers, only those get vaccinated, the pandemic will keep coming. We'll have a second wave, third wave, fourth wave, and we'll keep going with this.
Dale Mckinley, a final question. Are you concerned about micro-vaccine apartheid? So the moment we have the vaccines in this country, is there not going to be another mini-scramble, as well regulated as it might be, that those who have the money are going to try at least to jump the queue?
I would say that that's a real possibility, but it can be avoided. I think if the plans that are put in place, the deal with, for example, the medical aids and the public-private sector approach, the rollout in the provinces, if we have a proper plan and it's well managed, and we bring both the private and the public on board, I think we can largely avoid that. Let's as a population, as a people, let's not allow this to happen, because if we do, we're going to all be paying the price for the next year or two at least.
Dale Mckinley, thank you very much for joining us. I want to go live now to